Happy 4th of July, or whenever you happen to be watching this. I am recording this on the 4th of July, 2019. I am, as always, the last guy anyone asks, Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. And today I wanted to circle back on a topic that I teased covering a couple episodes ago, and that is the idea of movies that I love that other people seem to hate, or in some cases, movies that I really don't like that other people seem to love. We're going to talk about a few examples of the former. Now, this in the context of myself being a film critic, and also just before I was a film critic, finding that my tastes usually ran contrary to popular opinion. Contrary to what a lot of people think, movie critics don't actually get off on being contrarians. Like anybody else, we have feelings and we have tastes, and when we share them with people, it doesn't feel that great to be in the minority. I guess that's also generally true in life in terms of opinions. Everyone likes to get along and feel that they have value in the ways that they look at the world and feel that they can connect with other people having similar tastes. But in the case of the movies at hand today, I wanted to talk about a film called Booksmart, which came out, I believe it was Memorial Day weekend. And most of the press surrounding this movie had to do with the fact that it didn't do very well, even though it was very critically well received. Certainly just about everybody I know who saw the film when it came out, or even in advance of it coming out, was really singing its praises, and I was kind of excited to see it, but I never got around to it. And because it did not perform well at the box office, it kind of went away, and I figured, well, I'll just have to wait until home video and see it that way. Fortunately, last weekend was my birthday weekend. That was the day that I launched this YouTube channel, actually. I went to, it was the night before. It was that Saturday. I went to go see a movie with my wife. It was kind of a date night. The problem with being a film critic is that a lot of times I've seen everything, or at least everything I'm interested in seeing. Fortunately, one of the theaters that was near me was showing Booksmart, and I was totally floored. And I said, okay, we should go check this out, because again, everyone's been raving about it. We went to see it. I was happy to see that it wasn't sold out, but it was a very packed theater. I was quite pleasantly surprised. I guess some folks are tired of the blockbuster fare. They really want to go see a quote-unquote real film, and this certainly qualifies. Olivia Wilde directed the film. People might know her from various things, like Tron Legacy. I know her from the OC going way back, and this was her directorial feature debut, and it's a quite impressive one. I was not a fan of the film, but I was a fan of the filmmaking to a large degree. And one of the big problems I had with this was, and this possibly was a matter of expectations or things that I'd read or heard, but this was sort of a female version of Superbad, a movie that I haven't watched it in several years, but I remember when it came out, I really loved it. Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen made that movie, and I think they wrote it in high school or something like that, or they started it in high school and then developed it later on. So a female version of that I thought could be pretty fun. You know, you've got two sort of outsider characters who are navigating high school, and they get into some crazy hijinks, and there's a lot of swearing and rambunctiousness and underage drinking and sex. You know, who wouldn't be excited about that? Well, actually, maybe you shouldn't be excited about underage drinking and sex, which is definitely an issue that Booksmart sort of skirts around, particularly towards the end. But this movie follows two best friends. They're the high achievers in their high school, and they're played by Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever, who are just they're terrific. I love their performances as these. Again, they're snobs, intellectual snobs, in that they are, you know, one is the valedictorian of the school and the other might be the salutatorian. I don't recall, but they're going places. One is going off to an Ivy League school, and the other is going to take a gap year and help people in another country, you know, sort of underserved communities, while she figures out what she wants to do with the rest of her life. And these best friends discover that all the people that they've sort of looked down upon in high school, even though they're in the sort of the unpopular caste in their school, everybody else that they see as stoners and losers and people who aren't going anywhere, they are actually high achievers themselves. They're going off to work at Google and go to Ivy League schools and that kind of a thing. So they decide the night before graduation that they're going to let loose and go wild. They're going to go to the big party that they haven't gotten invited to, but they're going to crash it. They have trouble getting to the party, which leads to them going to other parties and getting in all sorts of various trouble. There's relationship dramas. The one girl is gay, and she's got a crush on a classmate who doesn't know if their feelings are reciprocated, and everything comes out in the wash in this one big important night. We've seen variations of this movie 100 times to various degrees of success. I would say that the angle that it is to female best friends is certainly refreshing and new. And again, I think the performances were strong, but where it fell apart for me was in the conceptualization of who these characters are and what they stand for. The movie was written by 4 people, and it really feels like it to me. And it's a film that feels like its politics are paramount rather than trying to reach down and tell a truly heartfelt and relatable story. These both the girls, their names, I have them written down, Molly and Amy. Sorry, I should have memorized them by now, but they're sort of interchangeable to me. I could never remember which one was Molly and which one was Amy. That's not a gender thing. I couldn't remember Michael Cera and Jonah Hill's characters from Superbad either when I was watching it. So I'm getting old. But anyway, they're both extremely progressive, and they wear their progressivism on their sleeves and on their backpacks, and their walls have, My Body, My Choice posters. Sheryl Sandberg pops up as a book on tape in one of their friends' cars. I shouldn't pin this all on the characters. It's very clear that the filmmakers sort of have an agenda that they are putting behind the camera and also way out in front of the camera. And that's fine. I have no problem with political points of view, but it just felt like I was constantly being advertised to for a political persuasion. The bathrooms at their high school are unisex bathrooms, which was it was odd because I couldn't tell if this was supposed to be an ultra-progressive school or just the average Joe Blow high school. I haven't been to high school in a long time, so I can't really say if this is real to someone's high school experience, but it never felt like a real movie to me. And it also didn't feel like it was supposed to be a heightened high school comedy, kind of like a movie like Clueless or something, where it's very obviously meant to be a satire on privilege. And in that respect, I think it is 2 different films. You've got this sort of a harder hitting relationship dramedy between Amy and Molly as they figure out what it's going to be like for them who've been inseparable for at least 4 years. I think their friendship extends way back into their childhood to finally have to be apart from each other. And also just to figure out how they relate to the wider world. They're very insular. Again, they had no idea somehow that every other student in their high school was an overachiever, or at least just below their tier in terms of academic achievement. That's a cute idea for a sketch, but as far as trying to accept that as an audience member, I don't get it, and that might just be me. I don't know how you sit in class with people that you despise for 4 years and not catch on to the fact that they are actually doing quite well. But the other problem is in terms of being a Superbad style comedy, and again, maybe that's a prejudice I had going in because that's how people were describing it to me and I had a certain expectation. It doesn't go far enough. There are some high school hijinks, but when again I think about a movie like Superbad and even a film like Project X, which was another comedy that kind of came and went a few years ago about the big, parents are away, summer party kind of a deal. Those films really went to extremes, and I feel like Booksmart pulls its punches in several areas, and that was kind of disappointing. So I feel like the big takeaway, from my perspective on Booksmart, is it needed to commit to being one film or the other. And if you're going to kind of make the film semi-political, at least by the decor, the trappings of it, then to use that opportunity to really say something instead of just, instead of showing everything, they need to actually delve in and say something. Another film that I want to talk about that sort of falls into this same camp. Before before I move on, I wanted to highlight a moment in Booksmart that I'm going to be remembering throughout the rest of the year. This isn't going to be on my best of the year list because obviously I didn't really care for the movie that much. I liked it, but I also didn't like it, which is kind of a strange position to be in. There's a swimming pool scene where Caitlin Dever, who plays it's Amy. Let me check my notes again. Yes, it's Amy. It's Caitlin Dever. She dives into the pool at this big party, and it's crowded. She follows the girl that she's interested into the pool, and she's swimming around underwater, and there's just this beautiful moment of discovery. It's wonderful music and beautiful cinematography, and it was just a wonderful character moment that I hadn't quite seen since The Graduate. It felt almost like a riff on that, but also taking the idea of that confusion, that anticipation of the end of high school to an entirely new level. I thought it was just captivating. So if you see Booksmart for no other reason, go for the swimming pool scene. But another film that I watched, it was a couple of nights afterwards, is another movie that came and went in, I believe, February, and it was called Fighting with My Family. And that movie stars Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or at least he was heavily advertised as being in it, but he's not in it that much. He is an inspiration to the main character, a character named Soraya, who is played by Florence Pugh. The film was written and directed by Stephen Merchant, who you may remember from The Office, the British Office, and it is about a young girl who grows up in England. Her family is super into wrestling. Her parents, her brother, they are being sort of groomed to become superstar wrestlers. And one day the WWF, I think this was before it became WWE, I'm a little fuzzy on the timeline, they came to town, they were recruiting people, and Soraya gets in, and she changes her name to Paige, and Paige is an actual wrestler in the organization. I assume from what the film told me, I haven't watched wrestling in a long time. But this was a movie that was, again, about the uncertainty of a young, sort of high school age girl trying to figure out who she wants to be and how she interacts with the world. And there is a direct parallel between this movie and Booksmart in that a lot of the women that, I guess, women, young girls, however you want to put it, they're probably like in their late teens or early 20s. A lot of the folks that she is competing with for this shot at being a WWE wrestler are savagely attractive, blonde, stacked model types. They don't get along with Paige, who is very short and pale and has the black hair and the whole goth thing going on. It has a very tough kind of exterior. Paige looks down on them as being shallow and not having a lot going on beyond wanting to just be models and be not take wrestling seriously. She considers it an art form. As she puts it, it's fixed, not fake, which is a very interesting plot point that is sort of derailed in the third act, but I won't quite give that away. But in terms of the way the main character treats the other characters as far as expectations, and you can't always judge a book by its cover, I think Fighting with My Family goes to places that are a bit more realistic, a little more dramatically satisfying, and actually have more to say to the audience than what Booksmart had to offer. I think Fighting with My Family is a movie that I'll be remembering at the end of the year for not Best Picture necessarily, but my list of 19 films of 2019, yeah, I think it could definitely be on there. It's entertaining, it's very funny, it's got a surprising amount of dramatic heft to it as well. Florence Pugh is phenomenal playing this young woman who is stuck between two worlds of the sort of scrappy down-home wrestling versus the big wide world of entertainment. She's got a gruff coach played by Vince Vaughn, who is this might be the best thing that he's done in a long time, although I've heard he's had some more serious roles in smaller movies that I haven't caught up with yet. So as far as comedic with that dramatic tinge to it, yeah, spot on. I can recommend this movie for the performances. The story, yeah, I mean, there are no huge surprises or revelations that you won't see coming from a mile away, but Fighting with My Family is definitely a movie that you watch to be entertained and not necessarily get caught up in the plot details. And it's straightforward enough that you don't come away from it wondering about the machinations of it, like just in my own experience, like happened with Booksmart. So yeah, I saw another movie with Florence Pugh this week too. I've seen a lot of movies this week. Midsummer. Ari Aster's movie. It's his follow-up to Hereditary, which was huge last year. I'll be talking about that with some colleagues coming up this weekend, and we'll hope to share that conversation with you next week. That's all I'll say, except that's another movie that was critically heralded, but I've got some different thoughts on. So I'll look forward to sharing those with you as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this little movie review / insight into the way that I watch movies, and the fact that film critics in general who have a contrary opinion to the masses or even to their colleagues, we take this seriously. We don't just go into a film with our arms crossed and say, you know, I don't like this movie because reasons. We think about these, and we have very personal motivations for rating and discussing movies the way that we do. So I hope that came across, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about this kind of a thing in the future. So thank you again for joining me on this wonderful 4th of July, or again, whenever you're watching it. Maybe you're watching this while waiting for fireworks, who knows. But please like and subscribe, leave a comment. If you love Booksmart and think I'm completely crazy for not digging it the way a lot of people did, please leave a comment. What did you think of Fighting With My Family? What did you think of Midsummer? Or maybe wait to comment when that episode actually comes out. So I'm running a little bit longer than I expected today, but we're talking about 2.5 movies really, so I hope you forgive me. So thank you again very much, and we'll talk soon.